Welcome to the Patriots Pulse post-game show. I'm your host, John Sarianides. And as always, I'm joined by my partner, Kevin Stone, and we are coming to you live from Gillette Stadium after the Patriots' 41-21 loss to the Houston Texans. The loss now drops the Patriots to 1-5 on the season ahead of their game next Sunday morning in London against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And before we get started here, I do want to remind you that while we know you have a lot of different options out there for your post-game listening and viewing options, give us a listen, give us a watch, and join the conversation. We are coming to you live on our YouTube page, our X page, our Facebook page, and Twitch. And Kevin, obviously, two stories going into today. One, Drake May making his first career start. Two, throwback day for the Patriots. That kind of took a backseat, though. It was more about Drake May, and really the majority of this show is going to be about Drake May and how the defense wilted in the second half. But just some overall thoughts on the kid and how you think he did in his first start. I'm just going to preview what I'm going to say by saying I was thoroughly impressed. Just going back in my mind and replaying his performance, there's only two or three throws that I thought he could probably take back overall. I thought he was terrific in his first NFL start.
Yeah, you mentioned throwback day. There were times where it looked like the early 90s with the offensive line. Really, he showed his toughness early on today. You know, we've talked about Jacoby being tough. We didn't necessarily know how tough Drake was yet. Now, obviously, we could have kind of assumed you make it to the NFL. You know, you're a tough kid, but he got smoked a few times today and got back up, although it took him a little while. But, yeah, I agree. Just look at the numbers, 20 of 33, 243 yards. He had two picks, but we talked about it earlier. One was tipped. Wasn't his fault, and it was a hell of a play as well by the Texans linebacker, Eric Murray. I believe it was.
It was Will Anderson who tipped it, and it was Murray who picked it,
So, I thought he was fine overall. The throw to Booty, we haven't seen a throw like that in a few years here, at least. So, I'm encouraged. It's hard not to be, but you mentioned the defense. It's just, and I talked to Jelani Tavai about this after the game in the locker room. You know, it's two steps forward, one step back. You get the quarterback play. You get 21 points. You get almost 300 yards of offense. Your defense gives up 41. So, it's just no complimentary football right now. We can say the special teams unit is still elite. I thought their coverage was excellent today. Again, not to kind of dive too much into special teams stuff, but just a lack of complimentary football. But I think you have glimpses of what could be here offensively with Drake.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly, and that was seemingly the vibe after the game in the locker room and just talking to people that are covering the team, that they felt the same way as we did, which is, yeah, you lose 41-21, you lose by 3 scores, not a good day, but Drake May's performance is a glimmer of hope, and to Kevin's point, it's certainly a view into the future. Obviously, a lot of the success that May's going to have here is going to be dependent upon the pieces that they put around him. But again, you know, you mentioned his numbers. He was 20 of 33 for 243 yards. He threw 3 touchdown passes. The throw to Booty was a thing of beauty. That's how you coach a fade ball where you want to throw it and place the ball. He did that there. His other 2 touchdown passes as well, coming off the play action pass. He hits Hunter Henry in the flat off a Y slam for a 6-yard touchdown. Then he throws a strike on the 35-yard touchdown pass to Pop Douglas, which was also Pop's first career NFL touchdown. So those 3 touchdown passes, I mean, they were perfect. They were exactly what you look for. The first interception I thought was a terrible read. He showed his inexperience there, basically throwing it into triple coverage. As you mentioned, the second one, they were trying to throw a flat screen to Antonio Gibson. The ball gets tipped by Anderson, and Murray makes a ridiculous interception on the play. So in many ways, that was a dead-on-arrival play. They weren't going to get that off, even though conceptually was set up well with the bunch formation and trying to slip Gibson into the flat on the flat screen behind the line of scrimmage. But other than a couple of throws, there was one throw where he missed Pop in the middle of the field that I thought he could have done a better job of anticipating and taking something a little off the ball. Other than that throw, and there was a couple of other ones that I thought he was a little shoddy on. I thought the kid played terrific. Now you know why he was the 3rd overall pick in this draft. I mean, this draft class at the quarterback position has superstar potential written all over them with Caleb Williams, Jane Daniels, and Drake May at the top. And you have Bo Nix and possibly Spencer Rattler, who could potentially eventually also end up being top flight starting quarterbacks in this league. But again, you got a glimpse into the future. You have to be happy with the kid. Kevin, you mentioned complimentary football. Obviously, the defense got shredded today. They gave up 384 yards of total offense, 192 yards passing to C.J. Stroud, 192 yards rushing, including two 50-yard runs in this game, one 54-yard run by Joe Mixon, and another 50-yard touchdown run to Dameon Pierce that kind of put the game away. To me, look, they were on the field a lot in the first half. And I'm not making excuses for them. I think that this defense has done the best they can in the last 3 years to keep this team in games. It was 14-7 at the half. But I think in the second half, Kevin, you saw the fact that they were on the field so much in the first half. I mean, the time of possession was something ridiculous. It was like 4-1. The fact that they were on the field as much as they were, it showed up in the second half. They were gassed. They had no energy. They were taking terrible angles, bad run fits. I've been saying it now for weeks. Gerard Mayo confirmed what I've been saying for weeks, that the run fits, the pursuit angles, and the tackling has been terrible. We saw that in the second half. They just look like a defense that's tired, out of shape. And it's not from a lack of effort when I say out of shape.
Yeah.
They're out of shape because they're playing a lot. It showed up in the second half of this game against a very talented Houston skill group.
Yeah, it's funny. Mayo said it verbatim. He probably could have done his press conference today. But look, I looked at you at one point in the second quarter, and I think it was kind of late in the second quarter, and they had 6 minutes of possession time. It was brutal. They had, I believe it was 21-6 plays ran in the first quarter. And that first quarter was abysmal, and that sort of set the tone for the rest of the day. But yeah, they were gassed by midway through the third quarter. So, but he's talked to you, and you mentioned the angles. They can't tackle right now, especially the linebacker core. So that's a little worrisome, just because you're not getting any bodies back anytime soon. This is who you are on both sides. Yes, they're banged up. You had Kyle Duggar back, but again, this is who they are. So, very worrisome in terms of, again, it's not a, and he said this too, it's not a lack of effort.
No.
I just don't know if they're that talented, which they have some very talented players, but as a unit, they're just not very good.
Well, and let's not forget, as we talked about, Barmore's out, Bentley's out, Peppers is out. You're going to feel that. I mean, those are arguably, you can make the case, 3 of your 4 best defensive players. You're playing without them right now. And so I do think between the injuries and, again, the amount of time that they're spending on the field, especially the last 3 weeks when this offense couldn't do anything, they have been unable, really the last 4 weeks, the last 4 games, they've been unable to do anything in terms of possessing the ball and putting drives together and scoring. It's going to take its toll on you. And I think, unfortunately, what you saw in the second half today is a defense that's played too much this season so far because of the lack of production from the offense. And I also think it speaks to this Houston team and just how good they are. You can make a strong case, and I certainly feel this way after watching them in person today. I mean, if Kansas City's the best team in the AFC, the Texans are 1A. I mean, they're right there. And I think for all you Kansas City Chief haters out there, they're probably your best chance at unseating the Chiefs in the AFC. They were certainly impressive there. And after the game, you had a chance to speak to Jelani Tavai about the state of the defense and their performance today. And what were you able to glean from that conversation with Jelani?
So it's more or less, it's what you expect. We're grown men and we have to be better, which I only get you so far until you see results.
Yeah.
I did ask him, and we'll have a story up tonight or early tomorrow morning. Obviously, they're going to London this week, and you always hear, getting away can help a team. And I asked him, making that kind of trip, it's not an ordinary road trip. It's very different, heading to another country. I said, can that kind of help you guys, getting away from all the chatter that's obviously going to be on the radio and TV around here? And he point blank said, hell no. He said, we have to play better on the field. It's all about correcting mistakes and having a better effort. But again, that only gets you so far until you see it. So it sounds good. And thankfully they play Jacksonville, who got smoked by the Bears today. And
they're a mess.
I do think you can actually win this game coming up, especially if Drake kind of rides that momentum that he built today. But defensively, I mean, you can't take them at their word right now until you see results. Bottom line.
Yeah, no, I agree. And next week certainly is a winnable game.
If they get shredded by Jacksonville, then it's a real problem going forward.
No, I think it'll be a major problem if you get shredded by that offense. And they have struggled all year long, and they struggled again today in a 35-16 loss to the Chicago Bears. Receivers, I mean, that's the other story here. I mean, we're so hyper-focused on Drake May and the performance of the defense, Kevin, that we're not talking about the performance of the receivers here. Pop Douglas, best game of his career, 6 catches, 92 yards. He had his first career touchdown. Kayshon Boutte, he had 3 catches for 59 yards, including a 40-yard touchdown, his first career touchdown. Hunter Henry finished third in receiving with 3 for 41 and a touchdown. Little disappointed in Jalen Polk. I thought with Drake May starting now, we might see more out of him. He only had 1 catch for 4 yards. But just your thoughts on the performance of the receivers, and is it time to get excited about this group? Is this group better than they've looked this year? And really, if you want to go back to last year even, is there more talent here than we think?
Yeah, I mean, I thought so coming out of training camp. I think you did too. I still think Polk might be the best receiver. But, yeah, it's good to see Douglas get involved, and I'm sure he's happy about it. Didn't get a chance to talk to him after the game. But and having Kendrick Bourne back, I think, changes a lot, too, just as another kind of playmaker out there. I know he hasn't done much yet as he kind of works his way back into the fold. But, yeah, of course. And, again, that goes back to the quarterback. You have a guy that can get them the ball now. I think the biggest thing about Drake is he can make throws on the run. Like, how many times
he made plays on the run? He led him in rushing today.
Right.
He had what? He had 5 attempts for 38 yards. But to your point, not to cut you off, you did see that ability to improvise on the move, that playmaking ability where he can extend plays, he can continue drives. We saw that today. He did it with his legs as well. This is the player that they were getting coming out of North Carolina. If this kid was handled the right way, developed the right way, he's just as good as Williams and Daniels. He can make he probably has the best arm between the 3 of them. He's just as talented as those guys. And like I said, to do that against this defense, by the way, let's not forget, this is pretty much an elite unit here, one of the better defenses in the league. Go back and look at what Caleb Williams did against these guys in week 2. He got sacked 7 times.
Look at Josh Allen last week.
Josh Allen last week. So to do what he did today against this unit, it's pretty impressive. But back to the receivers, and we do have a couple comments here as well.
Just to continue on that, I think it's big for them to have a quarterback that can do that because they're not going to quit on their ups. They're going to try and continue to get open. So I think that's big. I'm disappointed by the tight ends. Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper's fumble was brutal, but
it's just
he
makes a great play digging it out, and then he turns around and he half-ass handles it and he fumbles.
And I don't know about you, I'm expecting more on Hunter Henry than we've gotten so far this year. Now, maybe, again, it's just getting used to working with Drake and all that. But he's been, I don't know if disappointing is the right word, but maybe lackluster compared to what I thought we'd get out of him. But the other thing, too, just real quick before we get to the comments, I thought the play calling was extremely conservative early on. Did you feel the same way?
Early on, you got the sense that they were trying to protect him.
Yeah.
And they were trying to hang around in the game. But I thought so, especially Van Pelt called 2 running plays in the first series. He only threw once with Drake, and it was a deep 5-step concept that he airmailed into the Patriots sideline. But, yeah, I mean, they opened the next possession with a bootleg, and he hits Bourne for 8 yards. Yeah. And look, I talked about that in my game plan piece that I do every week for the Patriots. I talked about the importance of them really utilizing 3-step, bootlegs, sprint outs, quick 5. Start putting some RPOs in for this kid. This is what he did at North Carolina. Some perimeter screens. They ran, 3 or 4 perimeter screens today, including the one that went awry for the pick.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, when you think about the receivers overall, I'm pretty happy with this performance. I think that there's talent there, and with Drake May now in the fold at quarterback, perhaps some of these young guys can develop now. Hopefully we'll see Baker here in the next few weeks. But there's a lot to like there with Pop. There's a lot to like there with Polk. A lot to like there with Boutte. And for me, Kevin, honestly, this season, I've said it for months now. This is a bridge year. This was never a year that they were going to compete for a playoff spot or a division title. Anybody that thought that was delusional. This was a bridge year to 2025 and beyond. This has to be a year where you give May and these receivers a chance to gel, get on the same page, and do what Green Bay did with Jordan Love and their young skill group. Let those guys develop because it'll pay dividends next season when they're more on the same page. Friend of the show, Lauren Gaudette, joins us. I certainly appreciate the effort by the Patriots today, but Patriots were their own worst enemy, and we still need to talk about this, by the way. So in many ways, Lauren is segueing it for us. 4 turnovers and an inefficient offense and way too many penalties again. Yeah, 9 penalties. They turn the ball over 4 times. The undisciplined nature of this football team, Kevin, is frustrating. It's really frustrating because it's hard enough when you're not good enough, and it's even harder when you're turning the ball over. They have, 21 penalties in the last 2 games. I mean, you can't overcome things as it is if you're this team, but you're not going to overcome this. You're not going to overcome undisciplined, lack of focus play. And once again, it proved to be costly today because Houston was able to capitalize on a couple of those turnovers. But Gerard Mayo and his staff, and Mayo talked about this in his opening statement after the game, but they've got to clean this up. They've got to figure out a way to reach this team and say, hey, enough is enough. You almost have to start benching guys to get your point across with the penalties. And obviously, you'll do it with the turnovers, but the lack of discipline with this football team compounds their problems.
Yeah, 2 things on that. One, I will say, and this is not to excuse them away by any means, some of the early calls, the pass interference calls, especially in the end zone on that first drive, were brutal. I thought the referees were terrible today overall.
Yeah. This is a notorious flag-happy crew, Torbor's crew, so I'm not surprised they were as bad as they were today.
No, so, and again, it's not to excuse them away. 9 penalties is still way too much, but there were a few very questionable calls. But again, at one point, I looked at you. They had 42 yards of offense. 42 yards of offense and 40 penalty yards at one point in the first or second quarter. That's absurd. Like it's just,
it really is.
You're not going to win games that way.
No.
And it goes back to the point of you're not good enough to beat teams when you're beating yourself. So that it has to get cleaned up, especially when the offense is trying to kind of figure itself out. You're screwing yourself just with the penalties. So huge issue going forward. But again, I go back to what I've asked you and John Lyons the first 2 weeks. Well, the last 2 weeks, I should say, other than benching guys, what do you do in practice? Like, is there anything you can do?
There really isn't. I mean, the thing is, there really isn't. Other than stressing the importance of playing smart, playing focused, and playing fundamentally sound, there's not much you can do unless you start benching guys for it, which is hard to do because that could sink. You don't have enough bodies, and that can sink team morale pretty quick. Yeah. There isn't much you can do about them committing the penalties. Now, the turnovers, you saw with Stevenson a couple of weeks ago, he was benched. You can send a broader message when it comes to the turnovers and guys turning the ball over, but you're not going to – it's hard to punish guys. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to run the hill? I mean, you could, but, I mean, these are grown men. These are grown men. They got to know better. They got to know that they can't commit these penalties. So, in that regard, I think Mayo is in a conundrum. I think you just have to continue to practice situational football, stress the importance of taking penalties at inopportune times, and just continue to work on it and hope that the message resonates and it gets through. Lauren checks back in. The offense had some big plays today, but not a consistent improvement. I thought it was Van Pelt actually making adjustments, having 6 in protection and play action, something that he didn't do enough with. He didn't do enough for Brissett. I disagree with you on the offense and improvement. I thought the offense was much more improved today. Obviously, Drake May's the biggest reason for that, and you see what talent at the position does for you. It's why it's the most important position in sports. But, yes, I still think where I do agree with Lauren is I do think that Van Pelt is continuing to grow into this role as offensive coordinator. I thought the play calling was once again inconsistent. I do think he did a good job of developing a game plan this week that played to May's strengths, and they did things you need to do within this offense to help a young quarterback. But overall, I still think, and you mentioned this, Kevin, the play calling could be better. He could be doing a better job. I know our good friend Joe Murray at one point called him Alex Van Punt, Alex Van Puke. He was having a field day with the name. And I think Alex Van Punt.
It's accurate.
It's accurate when you think about this offense and how you can describe it the first 6 weeks of this season. But again, I think that the play calling was better today, but I think Drake Mays would made the play calling better. You have to give Van Pelt some credit for designing plays. He and the offensive staff designing plays that played into May's strengths.
Did you expect more design runs? Because I did. Or is it,
no, I didn't.
So is that just a function of not having the correct offensive lineman or enough talented offensive linemen then?
No, I don't think that running the quarterback is a part of this offense. I I think when you look at the West Coast offense and this modern version of the offense, the so-called Shanahan-McVay version of this offense, you're not going to run the quarterback unless you run quarterback draw. You're not running the quarterback. You're not running quarterback stretch. You're not running quarterback power with him. I don't think you're going to see that. And quite frankly, I wouldn't do it either, simply because you got to keep the kid healthy. He's going to take a beating this year. We saw it today.
Yeah.
He's going to take a beating this year. But running him is going to –
No, that's a good point.
Running him is going to potentially lead to more injury risk. So I don't think you're going to see that. And like I said, again, it's not a part of this offense. Shanahan in San Francisco, McVay in L.A., they're not running the quarterback. It's more about motion and shifting and running the football and play action off of that and then setting up your drop back and screen game from there. But, yeah, no, I don't think you'll see that. But I do think that they're encouraging him to improvise when things break down. Sometimes one of the best ways a young quarterback that's athletic can protect themselves is by just taking off and running. We saw that today when he had the 11-yard gain on his first run. He did a nice job vacating the pocket a couple of other times. But, yeah, I don't think we'll see design runs.
The good thing about that is he was decisive today. Like, he didn't hesitate. When he took off, he took off. So it's good to see.
It is good to see. You are watching the Patriots Pulse postgame show. I'm your host, John Serenitas. As always, I'm joined by Kevin Stone. John Lyons is on assignment this week. He'll be back with us next week. Patriots lose to the Houston Texans 41-21. Just a reminder, we know you have plenty of other postgame options, but if you want to join the conversation here, just jump on and hit us up in the chat feature. We are coming to you live on our YouTube page, our X page, Facebook, and Twitch. So, again, feel free to jump on and join the show. We would love to hear from you. If you want to talk about Drake May's performance, the performance of the defense, the undisciplined play, the performance of the receivers, whatever are some of the key storylines today that you want to touch on, jump on, hit the chat button, and share your thoughts with us. Obviously, the offensive line continues to be a problem. Injuries continue to be a problem. They lose Vidarian Lowe in the second quarter to an ankle injury. Thomas goes in there. He struggled. And look, good tackles. No offense to the guys that are here. But Pro Bowl caliber tackles, Kevin, are going to struggle with Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson. Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson terrorized this team today. I walked past Will Anderson's family on the way in today, and I looked at them and I thought to myself, these people are going to be very happy with their family member's performance today. And he was all over the place. He is, by definition, a game wrecker. He alters game plans, and he did that today. He tipped the ball on that flat screen. I don't know how many sacks he had, but you have to figure he had at least 2, maybe even 3. I'd have to do a deeper dive there on that one. But he was dominant, one of the best defensive players in the league. Hunter made his presence felt in the second half. But the offensive line, Michael Jordan goes down today. I mean, I don't know how much more you can do here. And Mayo talked about this after the game, and he seemed frustrated. But you could sit here and talk about coaching and getting more out of this group. But the bottom line is if guys can't stay healthy, it doesn't matter. It's negligible.
Yeah.
Right, you're screwed either way.
So 2 things. One, I've never seen an offensive lineman tackle someone into the quarterback like I did today.
It looked like Thomas sacked me.
That's one of the craziest things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And then you looked at me at one point and said, they can't
even look at each other a lot in games.
I know, it's not good.
We probably shouldn't be making eyes at each other in games.
So you said they can't even run a basic trap play. And if you can't run basic stuff, if you're not able to run basic stuff, just have Drake sit back in the shotgun and pray he can get out of there and go fend for himself on the run. Because I mean, what else can you do at this point? Like you said, I don't know how this gets better before it gets worse, and it's only going to get worse. So ultimately, putting Drake back there, yes, he's in danger, but he can maneuver out of it. Now, yes, he took some big hits, but again,
a couple of them were ugly. He did get up limping.
Yeah, and
he got crunched a couple of times. So
he was walking.
You worry though. Is he going to be able to finish the season behind this offensive line? I mean, you're not going to see 2 dudes like that off the edge every week in this league.
Right.
But it's still the best football players in the world. You're still going to see quality coming off the edge.
Mm-hmm.
You wonder if he's going to survive the season. I mean, like I said, he even said after the game, May mentioned the fact that he got a little beat up today, and but that it's good for him, that it gets him going. And I think it did, right? I think once he got hit a few times in the first half, he became more engaged in the next few series, and you can see that he was now into it. And sometimes it does take that for a young player to get them comfortable. Speaking of the running game and the offensive line, I mean, Antonio Gibson, 13 carries, 19 yards. Jennings at 5 for 13. Jermichael Hasty, 3 for 12. They need Ramondre Stevenson.
100%.
And look, they did this today offensively without Stevenson. If you can get him back next week and beyond, that's your best offensive player. That'll be another nice piece for Drake May to get the ball to. But again, the offensive line, it's a weekly conversation around these parts. I mean, Scott Peters and Kugler and Coach McCarthy, these guys have to figure it out.
So this just came to me, and I know you were a fan during training camp, but any way you can get Bob involved a little bit more to kind of just to get something else instead of you just sitting there dropping back all the time, involve him with end arounds and stuff like that. Or do you not have the offensive line to do it?
No, you can do that. I mean, one of the ways you can protect an injured offensive line or a bad offensive line is you got to get the ball out quick because you're not going to have as much time.
Yeah.
So May's not going to have 2.5, 3.5, 4 seconds to sit in the pocket, work through his progression, and hit the open receiver. He's going to have to get the ball out quick, which I thought he did a pretty nice job of that.
Yeah.
Jacoby Brissett in recent weeks had been struggling with that. But to your point, I do think that reverses, I do think reverse passes, H screens, perimeter screens. You saw they ran a bunch of perimeter screens today. Those are all ways that you can slow down a pass rush. Unfortunately, for example, on that flat screen, if your tackle doesn't get that edge rusher's hands down, it's going to get blown up like it did. It got tipped, and then Murray made a ridiculous play there. But, yeah, there are ways you can slow down a pass rush, but they're not ways. I mean, look, Pop is a good player, and he can be a special player in space, but you're going to get that maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 times a game.
Yeah.
It's not something you can live with. It's not something you can hang your hat on. It's going to be a change of pace to slow them down a little.
I only bring it up in case Stevenson is out for a few more weeks. You got to get more creative at this point.
You do, but I don't think if you're asking me if they can do that in lieu of running the football in a traditional sense, yeah, that's not a way in this league to make money. It's just not. I mean, it'll help you slow down a pass rush. It could generate a big play, but it's not something you're going to be able to do consistently. I mean, obviously they can run jet sweeps, fly sweeps. They can certainly put Pop in motion and maybe run a toss with him or throw a swing screen to him out of the backfield. But those are going to be – you're going to only get 4 or 5 plays a game out of something like that.
Right.
You're still going to need to find a way to run the football. And look, Antonio Gibson's been a starting running back in this league.
I think he's been pretty good.
He has been pretty good for them. And so I think that I'm a little disappointed by his performance today. Again, I think a lot of that does fall on the offensive line and their struggles. You hope if he has to start again next week that you get a little bit more out of him. If Stevenson can't go, my sense is next week we might see more of Jermichael Hasty too, another veteran running back who's been around and been productive. So
still have Kevin Harris too.
You still have Kevin Harris on the practice squad. Certainly you can elevate him ahead of next week's game. They will have options, but I do think ultimately they've got to get more out of the running game. I mean, I know we're all excited about Drake May, but he can't lead you in rushing. You need more than that out of it. Next up, of course, is the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're going to take on the Patriots next Sunday morning, 9:30 a.m. kickoff live from London. The Patriots are anticipating leaving on Thursday night after practice. They'll spend Friday and Saturday in London before playing the game on Sunday, and they will come home after the game. As it stands now, players are going to get their regular Tuesday off, so there'll be some kind of media availability tomorrow and Wednesday ahead of their game against the Jags in London. But on paper, Kevin, this looks like a game, as we said earlier, this looks like a game they could win.
Look, if they're not going to win many games this year, this one, and it's hard to call it must-win because you're not in contention or anything like that, it feels must-winning. You know what I mean?
Must-winning.
It's definitely not a word. But
no, you just made that up.
I'd make a lot of crap up. But again, just for morale, look, that's a long-ass trip home from London to lose to Jacksonville. You know what I mean? And given how Jacksonville played, we got to see a bunch of that game, on the TVs here this morning. That Jaguars team is brutal. Their head coach might be fired soon. This is a game you need to win. And again, we don't need to talk about draft positioning yet. Doesn't matter. This team just needs to win a game. and come home
Yeah.
feeling good about itself.
Yeah, you don't want to go 1-16. I mean,
No, and
draft
especially-
position is important. You could still end up with the first pick in the draft
Right.
for 3 wins.
and especially
so.
with the Jets after that. And you never know with the Jets coming here. They're in disarray right now. So
I think we'll get a better idea of what they're going to be moving forward after Monday night. If they
Fair.
beat Buffalo
Yeah.
Monday night,
oh god, yeah.
that becomes a much harder game to win here 2 weeks from today.
100%.
If they lose, though,
Right, that's what I mean. Like
I
There's a-
think that they could spiral.
there is a chance here to get a little bit of momentum going, especially with Drake, because again, most of the rest of the month, November, you're not home much. They're on the road for I think 3 out of 4 games in November, so and they're not back here until the 27th against the Jets now. So getting that Jacksonville win, coming home on that long flight from London, it's a chance to feel good about yourself because look, we were both in that locker room. It felt like a funeral home in there today. And this team is, I don't want to say getting accustomed to losing, but it's felt like that a lot lately. So this Jacksonville game is a very winnable game. And again, just a game you need to win just to get some better, morale around the team right now. At least that's how I feel about it.
No, I agree with you 100%. I mean, on paper, it is a winnable game. Jacksonville's the more talented team, but they have underachieved. Doug Peterson has not done a good job with this football team. Trevor Lawrence has regressed, which is bad news for the Jaguars and their fans because they paid him this offseason. He does not look like a franchise quarterback as of right now. He's really struggled, and I thought Jacksonville did a pretty good job this offseason fortifying their roster.
Yeah.
They brought in Eric Armstead from the 49ers. They drafted Brian Thomas, who's been really good, the rookie wide receiver out of LSU. So they made some nice moves. They added Morse at center from Buffalo to fortify the offensive line and give him some experience. And I thought that this, especially after week 1, I thought the Jaguars were not only a playoff team, but a potential sleeper as a Super Bowl contender. That's not the case right now. They're in disarray. This is a winnable game. If nothing else, look, today was a day of hope, right?
Yeah.
And I think if you're a Patriots fan leaving this game today, it's frustrating that they lost by 3 scores. But on the other hand, you've got to be excited about the future. There's a lot of hope here with this football team. There are brighter days ahead. The key here is this kid has to get better every week.
Yeah.
He has to get better. He cannot regress. If he starts turning the ball over, he starts getting hit, he starts being skittish, he starts regressing, then all the things that he did today against a quality defense go out the window. So you want to see consistent improvement from this kid on a week-to-week basis. I think if you get that, the future's bright. You can put the pieces around him in the offseason that he's going to need to be successful and that the team's going to need to be successful. But the key here is constantly moving forward. He can't have bad days. I know that might seem like I'm putting a lot of pressure on him, but he cannot have bad games because a bad game is a step back for this kid. They have to be positive games. And one of the things that I think is important to note, and people have talked about this nationally, is when you look at these other quarterbacks, Kevin, whether it be Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels, they have had strong running games.
Yeah.
They've had strong running games, and it reflects in their numbers. Their numbers are very efficient, where they're only throwing the ball 20 to 25, maybe 28 times, and they're throwing 3 or 4 touchdown passes, but the team is also rushing for 100 yards, and they're not put in a position where the team has to throw 35, 40, 45 times. That's something to watch here with Drake made, because I think it's going to be a similar formula for the Patriots. They got to get Stevenson back. They got to get a consistent running game, and I wouldn't throw more than 20 to 25 times a game with this kid. If you have to throw it 30, depending on the circumstances of the game, that's fine. But I do think if you can keep it around 25 to 30 passes a game, he can be pretty efficient. You saw it today. I mean, he threw 33 times.
Just looking, yeah.
But, I mean, again, if you can keep him in that 25 to 30 passes a game neighborhood and you call stuff where you play to his strengths, he can be efficient. He can be productive. The offense can be productive, and everybody involved can feel better about the situation.
100%. And again, you're taking more off his plate. Now, to your point about getting better, the reason he's in this spot right now is because he improved every day in practice, every day in camp.
Yeah.
So, but the only thing I worry about is that offensive line ultimately forcing him into bad games. So I feel like he's the type of kid who is going to improve every week. It's just I'm not sure he has enough talent around him for us to see it every week. And that worries me a little bit. But and again, I talked to you about this before we went on the air. He handles himself very well in terms of dealing with all this pressure.
Yeah.
He does not.
Well, there is a likable all shucks quality about him. He's just a likable kid.
But again, as a number 3 overall pick coming in, and look, I know he's not following Brady, but he is to a certain extent, you know.
Yeah.
So I think he's handled himself well.
With all due respect to Cam Newton, Mac Jones,
right, exactly.
Brissett, they haven't had a quarterback since Brady.
Zappy. Right. So
in essence, he is following Brady.
Yeah. So he's handling it all of it well. Again, I just worry that, like you said, this offensive line ultimately may force him into some regression, and that's an issue. So, but also overall, I think he's going to improve every week. There's nothing that we've seen either behind the scenes or in front of on the field that makes me think he's going to regress. He keeps improving, and again, it's why he's in this spot. So I'm encouraged, to say the least.
One thing before we go here that really did bother me, and I said this to you at the end of the game, was they had the ball inside the 20. They didn't try to score. That really bothered me.
And the fans let him hear it, too.
The fans let him hear it.
Yep.
You had 3 timeouts. You had the ball inside the 20 with under 25 seconds left. You probably can run 3 plays there. Mm-hmm. Why not try to score? I don't understand it. It's not about the scoreboard. Who cares? Right. This is the National Football League. This isn't high school football, okay? This is the NFL. And in that moment, you're doing your quarterback a disservice by not trying to score there. Mm-hmm. What are you afraid of? That he's going to turn the ball over and now he will have a 3rd interception?
With 18 seconds.
Right, and it's going to hurt his confidence? No, take 3 shots to the end zone. Try to score there. It was really frustrating to me. And I think in many ways, it still speaks to the lack of situational awareness from this coaching staff.
Look at the half. You ran the ball, and then you hurried up before halftime. Right. You had the handoff down here, and then I think you had to pass the ball. But gained like 13, 14 yards. Then they tried to pick it up. Well, figure it out. You're right. It's bad situationally, especially at the end of the halves and end of games. And it's 3 weeks in a row now? 4 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
Brutal.
I mean, again, I know people are going to say, well, what are you complaining about? Who cares? Well, I care because
they're live reps.
Right. Exactly. Perfectly said. They're live reps. Mm-hmm. It's an opportunity for this kid to work situations. You have 3 timeouts. Take a shot at the end zone. It's incomplete. The clock stops. Try again. If you complete it, at the 5, then you take a timeout. Work the situation there. Put the kid in a position where he has to manage a situation. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with scoring there again. Okay, so you score and it's 41-28. If he throws another touchdown pass, it's even better for him. It's even better for whoever caught it, and it gives this offense confidence. I mean, let's be honest. It's sad to say we haven't seen an offensive performance like this around here in 2 years. So
I think I showed you a stat. The 40-yard touchdown was the longest touchdown in 3 years, or something like that.
It was the longest air.
Yes.
It was like
pass
51.
Yes.
Yeah, pass in the air. It was like 51.7 yards in the air. I don't know. I know. I don't get into the PFF stuff, but that's very telling nonetheless.
No, but to that point, I'm glad the fans let them hear it after the game because, look, they stayed. Yeah. And at that point,
right.
Look, I know it's only a 20-point game, but what the hell is he in there for? And if you're not going to let him go try to be an NFL quarterback, put something else good on film.
You tried to score at the end of the Jets game, which felt way more out of reach than this game.
Yeah.
I don't understand why when you have the ball in that situation with 3 timeouts, why you don't try to score and give the kid even more confidence and give this offense even more confidence. If you do score, there's no guarantee you're going to score.
No,
but
how much better does 4 TDs look on the stat sheet?
Right.
Right.
If you did score there and he threw his 4th TD, that trust me when I tell you, folks, yes, you hate to lose, it sucks. But for Drake May personally, it would have been a pretty good feeling. And I think it would have been a good feeling for this football team as a whole. Yeah, and for Van Pelt. I mean, because let's face it, he hasn't looked good. This offense hasn't looked good. To me, that stuff needs to be cleaned up. The penalties, the turnovers, the situational coaching, it's all stuff that's subpar right now. It's not good enough. And it's a big part of why you're 1-5. We can sit here and talk about talent all we want, but when you don't have as much talent, that's where you've got to mind your P's and your Q's. That's where you've got to dot your I's and cross your T's. I don't have another analogy because if I did, I would throw it out. But that's when you've got to be on top of things as a staff. And 21 penalties in 2 games, mismanaging situations, turning the ball over, that starts with coaching. And you could sit at that podium at the end of every game and say, well, that's on us. We got to be better, blah, blah, blah. Eventually it falls on deaf ears because it's got to show on the field. And if it's not showing on the field, well, then it's a reflection of you and your staff, and you don't want that reputation of being a staff that doesn't coach disciplined football. Teams turn the ball over, and you don't win situational football. So hopefully they fix it. They obviously it's going to be kind of a hectic week around here. They're not going to have a lot of time to work on those things. They're going to work on them as best they can, but hopefully these are not issues next Sunday morning when they play the Jacksonville Jaguars in London. That'll do it for this Patriots Pulse post-game show. For my co-host Kevin Stone, I'm John Sirenides. We will be back with you tomorrow night for the New England Football Show at 8 o'clock. We'll have all our live streams this week, of course, and John Lyons will be back with us next Sunday afternoon after the Patriots